Hey everybody, welcome back to theclinicaltrialsguru.com. Again, that website address for you. In case you don't already know what it is, it's www.theclinicaltrialsguru.com. You may be watching this on the actual website. You may be listening to the podcast, which is, for this particular post, the method that I prefer, if I were a consumer, to be listening to it on Stitcher or iTunes. Or perhaps you're watching on YouTube. In either case, thank you for tuning in. Let's get right into the questions. As always, send your questions to Dan at theclinicaltrialsguru.com, and I'll do my best to keep you anonymous and also to get a response for you. So the first email says, "Hello Dan, I found your site last night while researching study brokers and let's get to the question. I wanted to contact you to first say thank you for taking the time to educate others and share your knowledge. The other reason I wanted to contact you is to ask your opinion about something. I recently closed a site which I co-owned in Pittsburgh and moved back to, and I won't say where because it might give it away. After looking for a job here and not finding anything that I had an interest in, I came to realize that what I want to start another clinic in this area. So it is what I believe I am good at, yet I find it to be a little more scary because I will not have a partner this time around to turn to for help or support when needed. Right now I'm looking for 2 to 3 doctors who would like to work in research, but I'm having a difficult time figuring out the best way to go about locating them. The last time I did this, we sent letters to doctors explaining who we were and what we were looking for, and basically decided to work with the second doctor we interviewed. I'm sure it's no big surprise to you that this was a huge mistake, as she was only interested in making money and was not a good fit for the kind of doctor we wanted to represent our clinic. I think having had that experience, I'm a bit more gun shy and want to make sure that I do the best this time around. Thus my reason for contacting you. I wanted to ask if you have any good advice on how I can go about doing this, basically starting her own clinic. I see that you own your own clinic, and with all the other knowledge you seem to have and my uncertainty about where to start, I almost felt that me running across your site last night." Okay, so thank you for the question. I do own a clinic. I own a few clinics. The doctors that I partner with, I knew them beforehand. I'm in the fortunate situation where I've been surrounded by doctors most of my adult life. My dad was a psychiatrist. He's no longer practicing as a PI for my company or any company, but the doctors that he put me in touch with were people that ended up working for my company. Now, I did network once I started back in 2005 with monitors, because as you know, a lot of CRAs used to be coordinators, and a lot of these coordinators still keep in touch. They had very good relationships with their PIs. So one of the doctors that I now work with, that I have a business with, was referred to me by a former CRA, a former monitor of mine, and she came highly recommended from this CRA who used to be the study coordinator of this PI. So this CRA, I kind of was, casually talking to her about how I'm looking for a new PI to open a new clinic, and she referred me to someone she knew, someone she knew very closely. She used to work with her, and it actually ended up working well. I still work with this PI to this day. So that is one example of how you can kind of network to find your PIs. Obviously, you don't have that luxury now. So what I would do if I was you, the letters do work, but you're going to have to just interview a lot of people. Like you said last time you interviewed 3 people. Interview more. Interview more than that. Maybe offer them some equity. Since you won't have any partners this time around, maybe you have some equity that you're willing to give up to make it more enticing for the PI. I know for startups, especially research clinics, a lot of times there's very little cash up front to start out with, but it is a very clinical research sites, if run the right way, they could be cash cows. So you may have equity to offer up front in exchange for, a bigger piece of the pie for the PI, basically. Or maybe you just want to keep all the equity for yourself, which I don't blame you. I mean, you don't have. I've worked in this industry with partners and without partners, and I can tell you that it's a double-edged sword. I mean, when you don't have partners, you get to keep all the profits, but you also have to do all the work, and there is no sharing responsibilities. It's basically you are the only owner. The buck stops here. Now that I work with several different partners at different companies, it is a lot easier and a lot more things. I'm able to delegate a lot more tasks because I have people to share the responsibilities with. So it really also depends on what stage of your career you're in. But if you're just wanting to get started and you want to go about finding a PI, I mean, social network, LinkedIn. Go on LinkedIn, look at doctors in your area, go to local hospitals around where you want to open your clinic and start talking with them. Talk with drug sales reps who may come visit you or any contacts you may know. But go to hospitals, put out an ad in JAMA, anything you can think of doing. I wouldn't go as far as Craigslist, but the letters might work. Like if you can identify a hospital or if you know some places where some doctors have private practice, you might send letters there, or you might even just show up and say, I want to introduce myself. I run a research clinic. I want to know about, working with this doctor and see if you want to network with me or partner with me or do clinical research with me. And you're going to get a lot of rejections, a lot. Just be prepared for being rejected like 90% of the time. But it's worth it because like anything else in this industry and in others, I work in the real estate industry as well. When I go door knocking, I get rejected like 90% of the time, but it's worth it because for every 90 people that say no, 10 might say yes, and that's a good amount of business for the rest of the year for me. So expect to be rejected, but eventually, hopefully, you'll find the right PI. Don't know if that answers your question. I mean, use LinkedIn, use Facebook, use Twitter, but definitely LinkedIn. Like, go on there and just network with different physicians in your area and see if they'd be willing to work with you and see how it goes. I got another question from someone who shall remain anonymous in regards to IRB audits. So they're basically telling me they're getting an audit by an IRB and they don't know what to expect. IRBs can audit you at any time, and depending on who you ask, they might be the biggest hassle from all the groups that can audit you. So from all the regulatory groups that can audit you, like you have the FDA that can audit you. Obviously, you don't want that. I would not prefer to have an FDA audit. You can have a sponsor audit. You can have a CRO audit. You can have an IRB audit. I've had an IRB audit before. I've had a sponsor audit. I've had a CRO audit. I've never had an FDA audit, so I can't speak on that. But guest guru and clinical trial guru producer Patrick Stone, former FDA auditor, he's got plenty of experience. Clinical trial guru producer Darshan Kulkarni has plenty of experience with FDA audits. But in this one, IRBs can audit you for any reason. They could be because some study participants complained. They could be because of an unusual amount of protocol deviations being reported from your site. They could audit you because you did not respond in time to one of those quarterly review reports. IRBs are in charge of, ultimately, they look at patient safety and they look at the welfare of study participants. So they're going to be big on consenting. So they're going to want to look at your SOPs and they're going to want to look at the consenting process, specifically how you consent and is it different from your SOP? Is it not different from your SOP? Also safety. How quickly are your safety labs being reviewed? And when there are adverse events, how do you handle them? If there was a blood pressure at a particular visit for a particular subject that was elevated, what happened? What did the PI do? What did the site do as far as safety follow-up for the study participant? And is the adverse event something of interest to the sponsor? Is the adverse event of particular interest to the sponsor? Is it something they're particularly interested in? Or is it just an adverse event like a random headache or something? Obviously, they're going to look at patient, study participant safety. So anything revolving around that kind of stuff. Also, what they can look at is your regulatory documents and see who's on the delegation log and are they qualified to do those tasks. Finally, I got one more question, and it's from, well, I might leave this one for next podcast because we're running over, although I might want to actually get into this. Let's see if I have time here. It's basically, it's a question from a research site, and they're asking, what do you do, or what is the best way to respond to, like from the FDA's perspective. So the FDA put out a guidance for PI oversight, principal investigator oversight. They put this guidance out a couple years ago, and it's kind of related to the last topic related to FDA audits. So from the FDA's perspective, when an FDA auditor comes in, so the last topic we talked about IRB audits, this one I'm just going to briefly talk about FDA audits, and I'm going to kind of try to answer your question. I'll get into it a little bit more in next podcast. When an FDA auditor comes to your clinic, what do they look at? Again, they look at the delegation of duties log. They look at your safety reports. So kind of similar to the IRB audit, they're looking at patient safety. They're going to look at how quickly the lab results from a particular visit are getting reviewed by the PI. Is the PI looking at it the same day and signing off on it? What about ECG results? Is the PI looking at the ECG results that day? Another thing is the investigational product. In many states, only a licensed person can give an investigational product. Is your study coordinator giving the IP out? At our clinics, study coordinators have always been allowed to do that. But as far as the FDA is concerned, that is a bit of a gray area because it should be who is licensed to administer medication in that particular state. And in most states, it is an MD or a nurse practitioner. So a lot of sites are having study coordinators assign drug or assign IP. The bottom line is the FDA is looking at principal investigator oversight. And if they don't see enough of the PI footprint on the study, meaning lab results being reviewed, IP dispensation, even if it's not done by the PI, as long as it's being reviewed and acknowledged, as long as there's an initials there. What else? The ECG results, inclusion-exclusion criteria is a big thing. Is the PI reviewing the inclusion-exclusion criteria? Or is the study coordinator just checking boxes and then the PI signs it later? They look at these kind of things. This is what I've been told from several CRAs and what I've been told from former FDA auditors. Hopefully this helps. I want to give my clinical trial guru producers a shout out. It is Sarah Elizabeth Siegler, Resolve Research Solutions, Accurate Clinical Trials, Erdhart Clinical Trials, PTNR, Patrick Stone, Darshan Kulkarni, Biopharm Systems, Zymewire, Mozio, South Coast Clinical Trials, Breakthrough Clinical Trials, St. Paul Medical Research Center, Investigator Research Group, Inc., Investigators Research Group, LLC, and Phlebotomy Services. So thank you guys for being guru producers, and thank you for watching. Send your questions, dan@theclinicaltrialsguru.com. Let me know if you want to remain anonymous. I will keep you anonymous. Thank you for watching theclinicaltrialsguru.com or listening to theclinicaltrialsguru.com. Take care.